presentation, and look at that. Look at that. This is working.
It works.
It works. I'm kind of in shock at first here. So kind of the first thing that we need to do is obviously we need to go through and do some setup. I'm going to move the microphone over just a little bit here too. And that setup, as you can see, we're looking at Bitcoin and have some fun today. So that setup, though, is really driven with Microsoft LCS. So the first thing that you need to really go through and do is make sure that you get an environment inside of Dynamics 365, and LCS is typically what we use to go through and do that setup. So I'm going to log in just really quickly here. I'm going to ask for the multi-factor authentication, which is fantastic. Love that feature, Kevin. It is the best thing ever. When I get the email that tells me I need to authenticate. Here we go. And Kevin's in the office. I'm expecting him to come in here and say, Scott. There we go. We're approved. Okay.
Beautiful.
There we go. So I want us to stay signed in. No, I do not, because we're going to be moving back and forth a little bit with this. So the very first thing, obviously, is within Lifecycle Services. The important thing to note with this is typically you're going to be on a certain platform version that you need to have as part of your deployment. And so inside of our deployments, you're going to see I've got a couple of different demo environments that I've spun up in the past. And one of them is actually started right now, and this is the SRF integration that's inside of there. Now, when you create that, the platform update that you need to be on is going to be 10.0.3 is the minimum version that you can enable this functionality with. And this one, I'm actually on 10.0.8 with update 32 that's been applied to it. So when you do this, obviously you're spinning up that environment, and basically what we have here then is if I actually go into my Dynamics 365 environment and I go to my supply chain management, this is that environment right here. So This is just a demo company that I spun up. I haven't done anything else other than just spinning it up and then making sure that it was accessible via the web. So, and then it's just running as a VM basically. So that's really the first step that you need to do when you go through this process. Now, the other step as well is that, remember, I've said this a couple of times to you guys on here, go to trials.dynamics.com and you need to spin up a demo environment for CE or for the other side of the house. So, to keep it straight, just think ERP, CRM. Remember, that really doesn't apply anymore, but classically, it's so much easier for people to understand that concept than to say there's, 6 different environments or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
the language here is still sales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what you can do here is that when I spun mine up, so we're actually going to go into that environment. We're actually going to go into the CDS environment that I created. This is, as you can see, I even named it similar, like SRF int, so I can keep track of what's going on here. This is the full gambit of all the different solutions that are in here as well. So one thing to note is that there's a solution you need to install, and that's a really critical perspective with this, meaning that there's something that we deploy in the solutions to really add functionality to CRM to enable then that connector. So inside of finance and operations, we're going to show what you do with that. But inside of CDS, you also have to deploy a solution with it. And there's documentation around on how you do that. In fact, on our team site, if you actually go into our technology news section in Stoneridge, if you're a Stoneridge employee watching this, you can find that documentation, the package from the Insider program, and then also the package deployer tool that's related to it. And I'm going to cover the package deployer tool because I don't know if there's any CRM people that are on this, and if they're from Microsoft as well, here's some feedback for you guys. That tool, it just doesn't make any sense on how it works. You have to take a DLL file, you have to put it into the root of the directory, you have to then take your package delivery files and then the folder and put it into there. And it's just like, why don't you just make a package folder and just drop the packages into the package folder? And then when you boot it up, it works. It took me probably about, of all the setup time on here, it took me probably about an hour to look through a blog and try to identify, well, how do I add it? How do I use this package tool to be able to deploy the solutions? Let's simplify. It's so much, it's 5 lines of code. But anyways, I digress. let us continue. So first things first then, get those environments set up so that we actually have that capability. Now, the next thing that you need to do is that you need to go through and then you need to enable some of those base capabilities inside of finance and finance and operations and finance and supply chain management. So what we want to do is we need to create users that are actually synchronizing the data back and forth as part of this process. So typically what happens, go to your Azure Active Directory, add a new test account. I added a Scott demo account that I use for this that has an internal email address, and we're going to use that user to be able to communicate the information back and forth between the two systems. Now, in order to do that, what Microsoft has done is that when you actually use the dual write capability, is that they have an application ID inside of the Azure Active Directory that you need to set up so that it has permissions basically then to access that system. Okay. And the way to do that is if you actually go into, let's go into our finance and supply chain management. In our setup that we have inside of here, when we go to our modules and we go to our system administration inside of this environment, and then we go ahead and we should see hopefully our, I'm going to expand all that's inside of here. We should see an Azure or an Active Directory setup that we can drive with this. So if we take a look here and we look at our Active Directory batch jobs, I'm going to go ahead and search real quick here. This is the beautiful thing about this. There's our Azure Active Directory applications that we can access as well. Mr. Stallman is in here, isn't he? I won't put you on stream. Can we put him on stream?
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
A special guest today.
A special guest?
He's going to explain it from here.
We stole Dave's office, so yeah, that's where we are. So poor Dave. So, but anyways, go to our Azure Active Directory and do our setup with this. And when we log into here, there's two IDs that you need to add to be able to support that dual write capability. So you can see I've got DI, Data Integrator App is what I called it, and then the dual write is kind of what the setup defines for that. And it's,
so why two users?
To be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, they've played it. They used to have just one user when they were doing this.
Right.
I think the top one is the data integrator.
Okay.
And then this is the dual write user that's with it.
Okay.
And so they've talked about that. I don't know if data integrator, if they're leveraging some of that capability or technology to synchronize the packages or to synchronize the data back and forth with it. But as part of their documentation, they're saying you have to have two different IDs that are set up to do it. Okay. And the interesting thing about it is that if you don't have both of these IDs that you set up, it does not work.
Okay.
So, like I said, maybe in the future. So all this that we're going through, when you do it through LCS, it automatically does all this for you. Okay. So what we're showing is obviously a dev sandbox not managed by Microsoft. On Microsoft, you can actually go to docs.microsoft right now and type in dual write, and then you can see that it'll document exactly where in LCS you go to be able to go through and do that setup. And I don't want to
important distinction though.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to mess with our production environment. So this is more for people that want to really experiment with it and get to that level of detail. So once we've gone through and set those up, basically you create a new record, you create these two client IDs that are related to it. Kind of the next thing that you need to do is you need to actually go ahead and enable dual write inside of Dynamics 365, inside of your environment.
And CE or on the F&O side?
On the F&O side still. So I'm staying on F&O for this conversation. Now, what happens here is that we've got to log in, and what I'm going to do here, guys, because I can't have you see my super secret password, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in. We're going to go ahead and select that demo box that we're going to connect to. So you'll be able to see me going through all of that. Go ahead and connect to it. And we're going to use a different account. There's our account that you guys saw. And there's a super secret password to my super secret demo environment. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And hopefully I should be able to log in here in order to make that password go. Of course, it doesn't work when you want it to work, right? Try again. It feels like it's better. Yeah. I don't like did that. Maybe paste it twice. Exactly. So, all right. Now I can go back down here. You guys can see my password. It's great. Okay, and you can see I've been playing around in here as well. So the first thing here, as you can see, is that there's a flighting that needs to be enabled. So inside of SQL Server Management Studio, inside of your demo environment, or your development environment for that matter, what you're going to do is you're actually going to go and enable a feature and add a value, and that value is the enabled dual write capability. And basically you have a magic number that you enable with it, with the flight service ID that's related to it. And the reason you do this is that, remember, what they've done really well with on finance and supply chain management is that we have that whole data management area, and I'm going to show that in a second. And in that data management area, that's where you go to click on the dual write tile basically inside of there. If you don't enable this, if you don't type this in, that tile will not show up, even in the current version. And so as part of the production instance, it does this automatically to enable the dual write capability. But typically, most customers don't need that, right? So they don't enable that or expose that. So just make sure you go through and add this to be able to then access that information. So once you've gone through and done that, one other thing that you're going to have to do is that you're going to have to go through and you're going to have to go provide consent on the application to be able to access now Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. So remember, there's an application, there's an app ID, there's a service, you can imagine it as, that's communicating back and forth that needs to reach into Finance and Supply Chain Management, and then it also needs to reach into the Common Data Service, or CE, sales, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to do that, you have to do that app consent, and if you've used it before, what you'll notice here, I'll actually go ahead and show it in just one second. There is, right here, I'll just show it real quick here, there is permissions that you need to enable with it. You can see the data integrator, AX Online, the data, all these services, because remember on the Azure Active Directory, you're giving Microsoft's service that they have that does the dual write integration permission then on your Azure Active Directory to be able to access this application.
Right.
So, and that's really important because if you don't enable that, well, then it's not going to be allowed to log in and communicate as part of that entire process. And that link, I'll actually show it here just really quickly here in the documentation so you guys have this on stream. If we go back to my PDF I have, is basically right here. You can see the OAuth, the ID that's related to it, and when you click on that, it's going to go ahead and then basically enable this, which is just, it's convenient, right? You technically, if you don't do this then, when you're trying to play around with it, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to log in with it. So that's a really important step that needs to be tackled. Just don't forget it as you go through that. So let's go ahead and bring that back up. Come back over here, dual write. All right, yeah, let's go over here. So now that we're done with that, that's all we do inside of finance and supply chain management. So it wasn't overly complex. I just like to talk a lot, as you guys probably already know. So the next step here is that we need to go through and do the setup then inside of the Common Data Service to do that, right?
Yep.
And to do that, we have a package that we need to install to be able to go through and do that. So what we do is on Yammer, I'm going to go ahead and just open this up real quick so you guys can see it. I'm going to go ahead and minimize, if I can really quickly here. It'll allow me to, actually I'll have to close out the demo VM that we have. Yes, go ahead and close that. So in Yammer, this is where we would go to get this information. So there's the groups that are here as well, and we're able to actually go through and then basically navigate then into kind of the dynamics area. And so you can see I've got a finance and operations insider program that's inside of here as well. So inside of here now, there's a FinOps and CDS data integrator that you can use to basically get this package file that's related to it. And you'll notice as you go through the thread here, you might have to search for the thread, but you're going to see that there's going to be a package file that basically you need to download. It's a zip file basically. So, and part of that, if I actually go to Teams as well, because I actually put it on our Teams site for it, what I can do here is I can actually go ahead and go into Teams, and we can go into our technology area. So if I remember correctly, it's in Stoneridge Companies, right? Technology News. And then in Technology News, we've got some files that we have that are inside of here. And then inside of our files, we should have a dual write folder that I've been maintaining. Here's all the documentation for you, so you're good to go with it. And here's the CDS solutions. You need this package deployer file. So this is that wonderful file that I told you about that's like, okay, why do they do it like this? But download this, and then you have right here the common data package deployment that you need to deploy towards it. And I've got two different versions on here, and I actually have another version I'm going to add onto here as well. Thing to note with this, if you're using the old one, field service wouldn't work with this deployment. The actual package would fail during deployment. The new one that they have for the finance and operations package deployer that's there does support field service. So you can actually just take the package and then run that to actually go through that process.
Okay.
And it's actually pretty simple to do once you understand how to do it. And how to do it is pretty simple. Take this file, unzip it. We're just looking at the contents of it so that you've got all these different files right here that are here, right? So that's the first step with it. And if I go back just a little bit here as well, then take this file inside of our CDS solutions, take the package deployer, unzip it into a separate folder, and it's going to have these contents that are related to it. Copy all these DLL files into the root of that other one, and copy that folder. Don't rename that folder name, and then run the package deployment tool, and it will see that there's a package that needs to deploy.
That's a lot of work.
It's like, wouldn't it be nice if you could just take that zip file and like put it into a packages folder, right?
Right. Okay.
That's, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If you've never done it before, it doesn't make any sense. So, but it's required to actually go through and do that deployment portion on the Common Data Service trial instance that you have. And what we can do here is we can actually go to that real quick and just take a look at the solutions that are deployed with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into, where's Adam when you need him, right? I mean, he's at another discussion right now. But so inside of here, if we go into, for example, our advanced settings inside of our common data service, inside of CRM, basically, what we should be able to do is we should be able to go into that area to kind of look at the solutions that are related to it.
And you could have more deployed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So solutions that are there, I mean, by default, I think there's like 20 solutions, if not more than that. Because remember, PSA is a solution. All these different ones are solutions that are deployed within that environment. So
yeah, and for BC users, if you enable the native integration, that's also deployed as a solution.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, correct. I don't know why our environment is acting a little bit slow for the advanced here. So I'm gonna have to wait just a second here so we can get to the settings. It's always something with a demo, right? That's just the way it is. So I haven't been keeping track of chat over there. Is anything amazing? It's hidden. No, over on the far right there.
Good to know.
Okay.
Remote plugin.
What's up?
We're good.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. We're trying to keep up with chat here. It's a lot of fun. So, okay, first thing here then, obviously within our settings that are related to this. So we've done all the setup within finance and supply chain management. Now what we need to do is we need to do some base setup that's related to this. And inside of here, basically, if I go to my settings and I go to my solutions, that solution, those files that we were just talking about, get deployed inside of here, and we're going to see then additional solutions that are added into it.
After they're deployed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're managed solutions that get added into here. And so this is the Finance and Operations Common, the extended information. These are basically, if you look at them inside of the solutions, these are then additional tables and schema that Microsoft has introduced, or new entities. So if you actually go to your entity list, that they've introduced them into CDS, basically. Yeah. So they've taken, for example, the loyalty cards that we have as an entity inside of finance and supply chain management. They've taken that and they've made that a common data service solution that is now in there, so that that table schema is really a Microsoft managed table schema. And this is where we were talking about the common data model in some of our previous ones. The common data model, Microsoft is defining what a loyalty card table should be. You've got healthcare that's involved with it. There's all these different parties that are making just a common view of what that data is. So that's why we have to deploy that, because we need to be able to synchronize that data now, because those loyalty card concepts, for example, they don't exist inside of CDS right now. The CRM doesn't need that. Field service doesn't need that. So what's happening here is we're creating that to then synchronize that information, which is really convenient. So once you've set all that up, there's a couple of other things that you deploy then with it. The other aspect of this is going through and then setting up users. So you've gone through the deployment, you went through and you added then obviously that package into CRM. And then from here, what we also need to do on our settings, we need to actually go through and set up some users that are related to it. So what you can do is you can actually go into your settings, go into your security that's related to this, and then go to your users. Mm-hmm. And on our users, if you drill down on here, you should see that there's application users as well. So just like we added that GUID that was inside of finance mm-hmm. and supply chain management, we've got to do the same thing here because this is both ways that we're communicating with it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on my application users, and you can see then that I have an application ID and some information, 2 users that are set up that are not exactly the same as what you did the setup with inside of finance or supply chain management. So on our data integration users, this is one example with it. You can see I went through and specified what the Azure Active Directory object ID is for it, and it populated the rest of this information. And there's my demo account that I used for it. So I just created a default demo account that's going to be used to do this. So that way, anytime a new user is created, it's going to write that then. It's going to say auto-posted by dual write integration user that you're going to see, because it's creating the user on behalf of the end user that's actually creating the account, for example, that we'll show with it. So those 2 things, that's one of them that needs to be created, and I'll just pull up this other one too so you guys can see the IDs that are related to it. Here's the other ID that's related to it as well. And like I said, if I remember correctly, if we go back over here, they're not the same. That one's close, that one is, but that one is absolutely different with it. So just
that's in the documentation.
It is. Yep. It is absolutely in the documentation. Yep. Now, the other thing that's really important with this right now is that these application users also need to be admins. Yep. So you're going to go to your managed roles inside of here, and you're going to go down to the system administrator, and you're going to check mark that so that that user now has rights to be able to insert and do all those different types of transactions that you need it to have. That goes for both of these that need to do that capability. So that's going to be important as part of it. So the other aspect of this, after we've gone through and set up those particular application users, kind of the last thing that we need to do for the integration here is to enable the team as well to have the proper security. And so this is a different concept. I'm not classically a CRM guy, but inside of this security setting, when we click on our security for as well, we have teams that we set that are basically the team name and the business unit that's related to it. And so it needs access basically to this team to be able to then create those entries and records that are related to it. So you create the 2 users, you give them admin access, then you go to the team, for example, inside of here, and on the team, you also then go ahead and manage the roles and make it so that this team has system administrator capabilities as well. Now, I don't know the impact of that. That's something that we'd have to ask Adam in terms of security that's related to it. The users feel like a more minimal impact in a lot of ways, but the team, I'm just like, well, is any member that's a part of that team have system administrator access? So there may be some discussion that you have to figure out. Maybe there's specific tables or more specific granular security that you're going to want to set up. But for the purposes of a demo or development or playing around with it to see how it works, I wouldn't even worry about it at that perspective.
Never worry about security.
That's exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Who cares about security? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's the base setup. That's the hardest of the base setup.
Yep. Okay. And it was tedious, but it's outlined in the documentation.
Yeah, and once you do it, I mean, you're seeing documentation on here.
Yeah,
once you've done it.
Page 9.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, one other thing too. When you deploy the solutions with the package deployer, sometimes what'll happen is it'll pause and it will fail. Close it out, reopen it, it'll skip the ones that have already been deployed, and it'll start deploying the next package that's related to it.
Yeah, and that's a solution deployment issue, because I've seen that before.
Yep.
It's not specific to this deployment.
It's not, absolutely not. Like, it thinks that it's still deploying another package, but the package is finished, and for some reason it's not saying, hey, I finished, and you rerun it, and it just picks up exactly where it left off. You will more than likely get that error message.
But you can run it again.
Exactly. And it'll check, and it'll go through that every single time.
Good to know that.
So great. We've done all the setup that's related to it. So now what can we do with this? Like, it's great. We've got a setup that's related to it. I bet you it doesn't work, right? It's kind of the first thing that we get to with it. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to go into finance and operations, and we're going to hope that it's going to work, because otherwise this is going to be a really short demonstration. So the area that we want to go to is going to be the data management area. So inside of finance and supply chain management, if we go into data management, so I'm just going to scroll down, and hopefully it's at the bottom of the list here. Of course, there's our data management workspace. Now, when I click on our data management, I've got some packages already because I've been playing around this demo environment. Because really, honestly, I mean, spinning up an LCS instance, it takes a couple hours. Spinning up a trial, not too long.
Right.
Doing the package deployment, it's going to take 20 minutes to deploy those package files.
Yeah.
You guys don't want to watch that. It's really boring stuff, trust me. So, but because we enabled that flighting, you can see on here that we have that dual write option now exposed inside of finance or supply chain management. And this is where the magic starts happening. This is where all the stuff in the background is being done to support all these entities that are going to copy back and forth between the two systems. So what you can do is you can go into your dual write area, and basically what's going to happen here is it's going to prompt you for some additional information on what to connect for the environment. It's going to ask you, what is the environment name? So SRF int was the environment. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to our environment details to take a look at this. It's going to say, what's the environment name? What is the company or the business unit that you want to integrate with it? So USMF is what I did with it. And you're going to see on our organizations right here that we map that to the SRF int team, basically, that's been set up inside of it. I think they call it a business unit inside of CRM.
And that's where BC is going to integrate as well.
Exactly. Yep. So guys, think about it. You could have a customer that has finance or supply chain management in one legal entity, and you could have a business central. They could have a hub and spoke model where they have a smaller organization that's running business central instead of finance and supply chain management, and you can do consolidated reporting theoretically then across both of those entities.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've set that up, and what I'll do at the end, I want to show you guys it working. We'll unlink it and then play with it and see how bad I can really screw it up, because that's more fun in my mind to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into our data management as well. So if I go to my workspaces, I should be able to go into data management from this perspective as well. If Bronca is watching, Tom, these features are really cool inside of the data management now. So click on the dual write. From here now, this is where we start enabling then the entities that need to then synchronize between the systems.
And I've got flexibility at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's the list, and you can see I've got a bunch that are already running inside of here that are then doing this synchronization inside of our solution. And what I'm going to
got 50 some at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a really good point, because if you look through this list, there's a lot of tables that are in here. The initial release that they had with this, when they posted, I think it was in June when they did the video that was related to it, they had like 20 or 15 entities that were in there that they were going to support the synchronization capability with. Well, they've added a ton more. I mean, you look at this is more than 20. I think we're at 50 at this point, like you were saying, and it's growing all the time. As they do these wave releases, they're adding additional capabilities to this. So now we have products that wasn't in the initial one. We have accounts, we have customers, we've got vendors, we've got payment terms, we've got main accounts, general ledger account information that's going into the common data service inside of those CRM databases. So, I mean, it's not, like I said, it doesn't solve everything right now.
Right.
But it's moving in the right direction for that.
Yep.
So that's that Everybody Knows song. It's too depressing. Let's go ahead and play a fun song. All right. So, because this should not be depressing. This is exciting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this account one. I'm going to stop it. And we're going to see that it's going to have an indicator that's going to show up here as we go through this. I'm going to unlink this because I want to show you guys how you link it, because what you're going to see is you're going to see all these set up as not running after you've done the initial link with it. Once you've set up the accounts that are related to it, once you've set up all that detail, it's going to be in a state basically that's going to be exactly like this when we go back into our data preview with this. With the account one, because, I thought about just doing like a payment terms and demoing that. And I was like, I guarantee, our team's going to be like, Scott, you didn't pick an account. You picked something, really simple. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, they're probably right. So what I did is I did all the tables ahead of time because it takes a couple of minutes to go through and do that setup. But if I want to link the account, so basically what we're looking at in here is this is the finance and operations. They're still using the old naming with it, but Finance and Operations Customers V3. It's a data entity inside of Finance and Operations. And the cool thing about it is that you can actually see the progression from Data Integrator. They have the Customers entity. They have a Customers V2 entity. Now they have a Customers V3 entity as they keep going through and refining this to make it better. But what you can do is you can actually go ahead and go up to the top up here. This is your list, and you click on Run. I mean, this isn't, you're not setting up a map. You're not having to do anything else from the data integration aspect with it. I'm just going to click on Run. And look at that. We have an initial sync. What it does is it's smart enough to know all the other tables or entities that are related to the customer entity that need to also be synced over into Dynamics 365 for sales.
Yep.
And that's important because payment terms and all these different values need to be there as part of that integration strategy. And what you also have the capability of doing is specifying whether or not you want to do an initial synchronization with that information. So imagine you're a customer that's spinning up a brand new environment within Dynamics 365 for sales, but you've been using finance and supply chain management for a while. Well, what you can do is you can say, you know what, take all my data from Dynamics 365 as the master initial sync and send it to the common data service. Or if you have two systems that you've had separated for a period of time and you don't want to join the information together, you can say, you know what, don't do the initial sync. Any customer from this point forward that I create that does that, I want to have that show up basically in there.
Right? So you've got latitude as to what you're doing.
Exactly. And it's a setup option. I mean, this is a discussion point with customers. When you do the initial sync, when you're doing the cleanup, there might be duplicates. That's where we really want to shine as a partner. We want to be able to help you through that process. I think that's just really important to note, though, is that you don't have to do that. You can have different strategies on how you want your data deployed for it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this without the integration with it, and we should see it go through, and hopefully there should be an indicator at some point here. I think I clicked on the wrong one. We'll go ahead and refresh this and just take a quick look. It's not running. Click on the run again. Click on the right button after I uncheck it. Run, please. Did something in the background there. Of course, this is a demo. It's not going to do it, is it? We'll take a look here. I shouldn't have unlinked it. Let's go back into our dual. Let's go into the customers. We'll see if it's going to run again. We're going to see. This is where we start getting nervous as pre-sales architects. We've done all this work to make it nice and pretty. And when we click on the run, it's not doing what we want. I don't want the initial sync with it. I want to click on run that's related to it. There it goes. It's
third time always works.
Yeah, third time's a charm. My mouse, I do know that it like double clicks. So
oh, that was it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's what it was, right? Okay. So what happened here though is I didn't do anything for mappings. Right. I didn't have to modify anything for mappings. Now let's say the next delivery, Scott, we add fields to tables every single time. Like it's not that cut and dry and that easy with it. Okay, fine. You know what you can do? You can go into your entity mapping here as well, and it's running right now, so I can't modify anything with it. But what I'd be able to do is I can actually go through and then modify those entity maps. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. Because
including custom.
Yeah, absolutely, to add those custom fields that are related to it. So what we can do here is let's go ahead and take just a quick look at that. I'm going to go ahead and let it load up again. And remember, it's kind of interesting. It's actually, it looks like it's not inside of finance and supply chain management. It's almost like it's an iframe that's accessing information in a different area, basically. So that's a creates, because I was modifying the mapping, basically, when I looked at it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So now I'm going to click on that. And here's the entities that are being mapped.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Right? So what you can do is you can actually go through and just add a new mapping with it. So you have a new field, add the mapping for it. Make it so it shows up in both with it.
Yep.
So, and you can specify what direction as well.
Yeah.
So do they both synchronize? Because maybe you want to have master data from one source or repository, and the other one you don't want to have updated or changed, or you want to lock it, or all these different rules that you can define with it. But you can
Credit
do that.
limit.
Exactly. Why would they modify that inside of sales potentially, right? That's going to be a finance specific one that we push, out to them. So just really important to note is that you can go through, and add additional ones if you want to through that. So it's a very easy process to go through and add that particular mapping. So, it's a lot of talk. We now have a linked environment.
Yep.
Theoretically. Let's play with this, right? Okay, so now let's go have some fun with it. So now that I have that customer account linked, I think what I should be able to do here, and I'm not a CRM guy, so bear with me. What we should be able to do is we should be able to go to our sales hub. We should be able to go to our accounts as an example here, and I should be able to look at all accounts. Great, and create a new account, and I should be able to say, you know what, we're going to do this inside of USMF is the company that we're working under for this. I'm going to say this is Marcus. I'm going to give it an account number. Maybe I would automate that too, right? You can kind of define what that is. I'm going to specify that this is a customer. I'm going to define a group. So these fields that you're looking at right here, the customer group ID, this actually came from finance and supply chain management. Right. This isn't a concept that classically is on CRM. So I'm going to go ahead and select that particular value. I'm going to go ahead and at this point as well, I can put an address. So we'll put my address down. We'll go ahead and put a city in here as well. We're going to do Kansas, is where we're at. 55110 is where we're at. So we can go through and define all those different values that we need on the actual account. And what I can do here now is I can go ahead and click on Save. Now, theoretically, when I've saved this, it should exist inside of finance and supply chain management, right?
Yeah.
And so look at that. It's saved. There was an auto post action that occurred with it. Here comes the drum roll, maybe. Go ahead and go to Finance and Operations. There's an account that I created. I should be able to go to, let's go to our modules. Let's go to Accounts Receivable. Let's go to All Customers. Look at our customer list that's inside of here.
Look at that.
Boom. Oh, wait. That was a mistake. We shouldn't have added Marcus. Let's delete it from here. I mean, should we be able to do that? Should we be able to delete a record inside of finance and supply chain management and have it come back all the way over into CRM? Well, let's go ahead and look at CRM with it. Let's refresh this page. Just going to hit F5 here as well. Do I get an error message or anything? Oh, the record's unavailable. It's not there anymore. Okay, so that's, fancy, right? Great. We've now synchronized with this. We now have the data going back and forth. We've proven that we can, delete it in one system, create it in another system. Haha, this is the fun part. Let's go ahead and go into my accounts. I've got my list here. Let's make it easier for an end user.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
How could it be easier?
Power App. Power App, right? So this is an app that I created in 30 minutes that we were talking about before.
Not distracted by anything else going on.
Not at all. Not at all. We were at iFly. I don't know if you guys have ever done the indoor skydiving.
That was
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. A lot of fun. So what I'm going to do is I got my environment, and I should have an application, my customer account information that's here.
Look at that.
Right? So I'm going to show it on the screen. I'm going to see if I can do it inside of my phone as well, because what I'd like to do is take a nice picture as well as we go through this. So here is my application that I created. Basically what I did is I created a new app. I pointed it to the looks like we got a demo coming up here. I pointed it to the account table, and it then generated the detail and all that information with it. And so here is that application, and I'm using my finger to kind of scroll through it at this point as well.
And this is This is the default application that's created. So you did nothing other than walk through a wizard.
Yeah, I walked through a wizard and I made some of the fields. I defined what fields I wanted on the gallery control here, basically.
But you could change this to look however you wanted. Really.
Absolutely.
This is just the standard.
So what I'm doing here on my phone is I'm doing this action. I clicked on the plus, and basically you see all the different drill downs that were on, obviously the other one as well. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a customer. I'm going to do a different customer number. I'm going to do A, B, C, 676 is what we'll do with it. And we'll do Scott for peer. Great. So, I've done all that in terms of those values that I'm entering.
You can show our audience right there. It's on your phone.
Yeah. You can see it. You can see it there. So this isn't smoke and mirrors, guys. This is real stuff. I'm going to add the customer group as well, customer group 10. And Marcus, I want you, sorry, I apologize.
I'm very photogenic.
Yeah, I know. You look great. So there we go. Took a photo. There's Marcus and his photo that we have right there. Save it away. We got the image that's related to it. I just did this on my phone. I'm going to go ahead and click on the check mark for it.
Hey, well, that's working there. There is a question about transactional data in 365. If you delete the account in CRM, do you want to answer that one?
So right now it's all master data. And the cool thing about this, though, is that, let's say that you have a customer and you have an accounts receivable balance that you posted to. When you do the delete operation inside of CRM to delete that account, basically, it reaches into finance or supply chain management. And if there's an error while it's doing it, it'll give you an error and it'll tell you what that error is in the other system.
Yeah, so I showed that to me. So it actually does happen.
It does pass through with that. Now, transactional tables, as you guys have probably seen, we're looking at master data tables right now, right? But that's going to be the next step that we look at, is having that transactional information actually replicated over into the common data service as well for that. Yeah. So if you want to do reporting, if you want to start moving this to the Azure Data Lake and all those different services, well, the information is there and you can do that.
Yeah.
So
a lot of doors are open now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So in this one, I just created a new one. And I think I said it was Scott, right? So if I search real quick here, there's Scott for Fear. It's not Scott for Fear, but it's Marcus, right? Marcus's photo is in here. And so now that I've got the photo, what I can do is I can just show you some edits that we can do to it. So we're going to go to our edit screen. We're going to add an address again, right? So there we go. And like I said, this just makes it easier from the user experience. I was doing this on my phone, and I can just save it away, and this is great, right? This actually has that information that I can then access from my application. So any type of application that you want to use to do this, you can do that with. Now, let's go ahead and look at my accounts, right? So here's my active accounts. Let's look at all accounts that are inside of here. Now, the nice thing about a Power App, remember, is that it natively integrates within Dynamics 365 for Sales, right? That's something that's been there for a long time. And so if we search for Scott, I'm hoping we're going to see Scott inside of here. Great. And if I click on Scott here, look at that. The image that you had was there as well. So if I actually take a look at that image and that control I added to the Power App, there's Marcus, there's the image that's there as well.
Yeah, and no programming.
No programming.
Yeah, that's what's amazing.
Nothing. Just take a picture and it did it. Okay, wait a second. Should I see your record in finance and operations?
No, developers are important.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. We need to use Azure Service Bus to tackle this. But anyways, that's a joke. Back into finance and operations inside of here. Refresh it. Look at that.
Yeah.
We have a customer. Edit it. Go inside of here. Scott for Peer. Let's go ahead. Is not cool. Now let's go ahead and save it. Great, right? See? All right, let's go to our customer. Let's refresh this.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, this is obviously, it works. We went through the setup with it. There was a lot of exploration, obviously, on the setup of how to do this, the researching that's related to it. And it's not fully baked, right? We only had that list of 50 that were there for those entities. But this is where they're putting more and more time into to make it so that now, in terms of when we as a partner are talking about solutions for customers, we're no longer just looking at creating all this app, for example, that took me 15 minutes to 30 minutes to create, would have taken me hours to create inside of finance and supply chain management.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, But there is something wrong with that, right? I mean, it's too expensive usually then to create something so targeted that may provide a lot of value, but that cost is too prohibitive for some clients to want to tackle that.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing. So yeah, when solutions like this were out of the reach sometimes just financially for some clients, where this makes it very usable for people.
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of the big things that we wanted to share today.